March the 31st, Halloween. 2021, that's a perfect day for the United Nations to get together. You think that's a coincidence? I don't think so. Here's what they said about, get my big head out of the way, United Nations.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders. We have before us the opportunity to forge.
So he called United Nations the New World Order. Ooh, United Nations not going to like that. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to crazy, kooky land. Yeah. Climate Change Conference. They're a corporation. Did people realize on this planet they're just a corporation? You got to ask yourself, what's 200 leaders from around the planet and 30,000 delegates licking and groveling and kissing the ring of United Nations for? That's a good question. Everybody better start asking themselves. United Nations. This is a radioactive fallout map. We got a lot of headlines on COP26 tonight. This is an invisible snowstorm of heat storm that looks, don't need to compare it to is like, you know how snow falls. Radiation can stack up and it's forever though, right? And it pulses energy every second. It could pulse it 50 feet away from you, these invisible atoms. These ionized, anthropogenic, man-made. So Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant had multiple reactors melt down. These were the biggest in the world at the time, 800 tons versus Chernobyl, 200 tons. And Chernobyl was mostly graphite. These are pure uranium, pure plutonium. And there was decades of reactor cores were stored at the top of the buildings. They also lost those. And so this is global warming. This is what global warming is. And if you look at the incredible acceleration of the weather, go back to Fukushima and you'll see it. So pre-2015, by the way, you never heard the word climate change in every single story multiple times, right? Since 2015. And this is Sir Starmer, very frustrated by Boris Johnson's lack of leadership ahead of COP26. Well, they're appointed by the Queen, right? They're fired by the Queen too. With billions looking on, come on, billions of people are not watching United Nations. This corporation take over our planet. Chinese manufacturer delivers zero-emission buses to Glasgow. Wow, that's pretty cool, isn't it? 55 zero-emission electric vehicles to Scotland's largest private-owned bus company. Gets all the government contracts. That kind of private-owned bus company. Yeah, bear with me. So one massive container ship is equal to 50 million cars. One of these bad boys. Then 15 of the biggest ships on the planet produce more pollution than all the cars in the world. Do you get it? There's 96,000 of these on the ocean at any given time. And that's equal to 4 billion or 42 trillion people on the planet, rather, at the same time, if you scale it up to what we have now. But hey, you're going to get your electric cars, and that'll solve the climate change. You get it? The only thing that's going to solve the climate change is this getting rid of this bunker burning scum. So they changed the law so these big ships can burn fuel that was supposed to be stored on a toxic waste site. That's the people at the G20, which, by the way, set the agenda for UN. We'll get to it. For a UN climate change meeting. Like UN's job is to get you to look everywhere but there. Don't look at this. Don't consider that. Don't remember this. Don't think of that. Don't take a screenshot of that and email it to everybody you know. Just don't do that. For goodness sakes. Hang on, bear with me. So one ship produces, this is important for the rest of the night here. One container ship equals 50 million cars of pollutions. It's much worse because they're burning toxic stuff left over from the coke factories. World's 15 biggest ships create more pollution than all the cars in the world. So 15 of them. So imagine 96,000 of them on the ocean. Shouldn't you be putting your efforts into something like that? And stopping Fukushima. The 15 largest ships in the world emit as much, well, it's more than nitrogen oxide and sulfur oxide. Come on, man. This is stuff left over from refineries they're burning. And it's only 16% efficient in those ships. Just killing everything. As the world's 760 million cars. You got to beat everybody. You got to drive this price of gas through the roof because, they love you so much. Chinese manufacturer delivers zero-emission buses. Way to go, China. The eye of the world falls on Glasgow. Oh, yeah. Every gay porn star is headed there right now. They're going to make a killing. The eyes of there's 30,000 delegates come in there. Lead key positions in governments. There's this bizarre thing we see every time these conferences of parties get together. And they party, man, like you've never seen before. They're not there to be conservative. Glasgow's world leaders gather to save the planet. Some pretty good fear-mongering there, you ask me. Can't keep up with me, of course, but that's pretty good. I give them credit. They took a lot of the goblins out of retirement to write the articles. I'm taking it. Strikes, road closures, and protests, and COP26, chaos looms. Which, I don't see how that's going to happen. So it's actually 200 heads of states, prime ministers and presidents, and 30,000 delegates. These are politicians, these are diplomats, these are key positions in government agencies from lobbyists. These are basically lobbyists, which is illegal under constitutions in America, or the Bill of Rights in Canada, or the Magna Carta in UK. Well, there is no UK. There's a prison down there called Britain. More than 200 heads of states, 30,000 delegates will flock to the city on Halloween. What are you starting something off on Halloween like this for, I wonder? Because all the monsters are meeting, Dana. Oh, I didn't think about that. You're pretty clever. Conference of Parties 26 will officially get underway on October the 31st and conclude 13 days later. So it's going to start on Halloween and it's going to finish 13 days later. I'm not feeling it, Dana. I don't know where you're going with all this, Dana. I hope you got a point to make. Just give me a chance here. I'm doing the best I can, okay? I'm just one man, for goodness sakes. Rail workers and refuge collectors to go on strike in Scotland. The slaves are holding you as slaves for a change. That's priceless. Yeah, because the rail workers and the refuge collectors, they're treated like scum down there. They picked the perfect time to go on a strike. You got another bunch of gangsters coming into their country. Let's mess them up as much as we can. COP26 doesn't have to be a summit, a slogan, okay? All right. Well, it is. How are you going to change that? Ah, yes. She's doing a booty dance for the crazies. Look at that. COP26 is not a photo op either, by the way. Scumbag here. UK calls on leaders to honor climate promise. UK, United Kingdom, who abandoned their veterans after irradiating, made them sit right where the radiation is going to land. Yeah. Put your head between your knees and don't do nothing until we tell you. And their children were born deformed. This is people that in a nuclear testing where they, went over United Kingdom went over to Australia and blew up their weapons in Montebello and Maralingas. And they waited for the winds to blow right across Australia before they detonated their nuclear weapons so they can radiate the whole country. That United Kingdom. Political cartoons summing up Yahoo Sports, of course. Yahoo's been bought by a corporation that done a transaction recently. They're gone Looney Tunes on us lately, I noticed. So they got cartoons. This is it here. Wow. That sums it up, all right. Oh, yeah. That sums it up. Remind me never to go to Yahoo Sports again. So you got protesters, all of them with the same theme as the meeting, as United Nations, a corporation's theme. And you got tens of thousands of delegates, and 200 heads of countries. You got all these protesters protesting what? They're repeating the same words as the delegates are telling them. Fukushima radioactive fallout is global warming. And those ships are pollution, by the way. But Fukushima radioactive fallout, see, coal, oil, and gas don't make plumes of plutonium-239. This is TEPCO's numbers modeled out professionally in an institution, showing the plutonium plumes, continuous plume I should say, covering both the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Oceans, all of the United States, the Northern Hemisphere, all of Europe, covered in radioactive fallout, pulsing energy at the speed of light for the next millions of years. So coal, oil, and gas doesn't do that. They don't make the big plumes, and they don't pulse energy every second at the speed of light. You know how much energy it takes to make something go to speed of light? No, you don't, because the only thing that can do it is radiation. That's what gammas and alphas and betas and neutrons do. They pulse almost at the speed of light. They got so much energy. That's heat too, by the way. Every second for millions of years. And so nuclear testing played a large part in setting the stage for when the Fukushima nuclear meltdown happened. That was the tipping point, because there's such a big discrepancy in the amounts, right, that was lost. Looking for the pain threshold why COP26 will not deliver. Queen Elizabeth will not attend COP26. I don't know why that got so big. Trudeau heads to COP26 next week. Here's what you need to know. Trudeau, his dad, and almost all foreign prime ministers worked for a French company before they became prime ministers of Canada. Just a coincidence, of course, right? You know, coincidence, weird coincidences, right? Most countries are targeting to reach carbon zero by 2050 to achieve the goal. Carbon neutral. Carbon neutral. So this is radioactive fallout Xenon-133 plume covering the Northern Hemisphere from Fukushima nuclear meltdowns 10 years ago. That ain't never going to go away. You can't see it or smell it or touch it or hear it or taste it or feel it or pick it up. But it's pulsing energy every second. And so the Conference of Parties, there's 200 monsters. That's what he's done this on Halloween, right? So this is global warming. Coal, oil, and gas doesn't pulse energy every second for millions of years. It's much worse than that because that model is actually based on venting. It's not based on the nuclear meltdowns. Prime Minister could cop a hard time, Australia Prime Minister. So that the media is the enemy of everybody who doesn't go along with the fake story. So carbon is the cover story for radiation fallout. And that's been going strong now since 2015, since the Powers Accord. That's when the propaganda machine started. And then over 5 years, it slowly got louder. Now you can't read a story. The climate change is real. It's caused by radiation, though. And the only solution is to treat. Like, if you got a broken leg, should I put a broken cast on your arm? You'd be like, what are you putting a cast on my arm? I got a broken leg. Like, no, you'll be okay. That's going to fix it. And you're like, what are you talking about? I got a broken leg. It hurts. Put a cast on it. No, I got one on your arm. That's what United Nations is doing when they tell you that carbon is heating the planet up. Carbon doesn't pulse energy every second. Radiation does. And zombies, of course. But radiation pulses energy every second. Forever. You strike for climate, uproot the system. What do you mean strike for climate? So what it is, this is controlled opposition where these wonderful souls want to change the world for the better and they get sucked into this machine that will spit them out in time, right? Out the other end, they'll destroy their lives. Or if they really buy into the rhetoric, they'll hire them, right? Wonderful people trying to do the right thing, and the machine has captured them and has weaponized them against me and you and the 8 million species on this planet. Prime Minister Modi to arrive in the United Kingdom today for the COP26 summit. Spotlight on the Paris Agreement. You still owe us 100 billion scum. That's what they're saying, right? Each year. They want 100 billion each year. You don't get it, right? Yeah, Danish 200 countries. Yeah, but you still don't get it. You will, though. Hang around. Climate change issues. And, of course, everybody knows climate change is the cover story for Fukushima nuclear meltdowns. This is another model of Xenon-133. It burns a hole in your lung and the insects and birds and mammals and animals' lungs. And it ends up in their bones where it mutates their stem cells and sterilizes the males and the females. And in increments over 10 or 20 years, all the species just disappear slowly one after another. It's just like they never even existed. So this is pulsing energy every second. That's actual climate change. That's what's going on for 75 years since Nagasaki and Hiroshima. By the way, you can go back and I've done a presentation on this year's anniversary. It's on this site here because they took down my other one 2 months ago. 24,000 subscribers, no emails, no nothing. Just bye-bye, Dina. And by the way, I'm Dana Durnford. I'm also known as the nuclear proctologist.org. And you can call in 709-589-4406 if you like more information on that climate change. I'll tell you all about it. Look at it. Ain't she a beauty? No two radioactive plumes like terracotta soldiers. I don't hide away from anybody because I'm an honest person. I don't need to. I've been doing this a very long time. Outcome of, long before Fukushima, outcome of COP26 meant life or death for millions. Oh, you know, these death plumes means life or death for billions. So they always want you to look over there, not right here. That's the rule of the goblins, is never ever look over there. Right, that's what they do. Don't look. Don't look. So look at the plume. She's not like all the other plumes. She covers the whole planet, pulse and energy every second. All of these were from governments or universities, by the way. And so oil, gas, and coal don't make plumes like that. Methane, what are you talking about? You don't see this? CO2 doesn't heat the planet up. Methane's not going to heat the planet up. Radiation heats the planet up. Decay is part of the process for all species, right? That's just, we're acclimated to it already through genetic superior selection. CO2, plants grow. You can't grow plants without CO2. Humans can't grow. Animals can't survive. The ocean can't survive without CO2. You got your brainwashed. Look, this is radioactive fallout. It's been going on for 75 years, but it's accelerated since Japan melted down. So all the nuclear testing was actually a nuclear war. It's the same bombs, the same radioactive fallout. The radioactive fallout, unfortunately, it's invisible. But all nuclear power plants are hemorrhaging radiation from the fuel pools. There's no containment. And the fuel pools are full of decades of reactor cores that are still splitting the atom. But the fuel is too fragile to keep it in the reactors. They're only about 5% efficiency. And so they keep it in the pool to try to cool it down, but it's still splitting the atoms. So it's boiling off 120,000 liters in 440 pools that we know about worldwide are doing the same thing each day. And each liter is trillions of atoms. And those atoms are creating plumes like this too of americium, neptunium, and strontium, and uranium, and plutonium, and curium, which is the... By the way, curium isotopes are the biggest byproduct of the radiator fuel rods. You need lead shielding 20 times thicker for plutonium than you do for curium. Or for curium than you do for plutonium. And plutonium was named after the devil. Curium is just evil personified. Boris Warren's civilization. Now, first off, Boris is a buffoon. He's literally and figuratively a buffoon. Anybody knows anything about Boris knows that he's an acquiescer. His handlers with the MI6 or MI7 or MI8, whatever they got there now, are calling the shots. The Queen calls the shots anyway. The family, Prince Charles, calls the shots. Boris Warren's civilization go backwards if the Conference of Parties fails to act. First off, you can't fix the climate. You can't go get it's not like you're going to fix a house or something or a highway. Like, look at the resources you have to put into building a nuclear power plant. Or like the churn in France, where you took 5,000 of the smartest scientists you can get your hands on, yanked them out of production, and stuck them in a facility in France to work on a problem that doesn't matter. When you got real problems going on all the time, right? And you could solve a lot of your problems if you can get those 5,000 scientists to do something good. Boris warns civilization can go backwards. The civilization should warn Boris that he's backwards. The COP26 climate summit is set to begin. Will it actually do anything? Yeah, it'll jack a lot of money out of impoverished countries. And only if the industry will benefit, obviously, right? They want $100 billion a year. I'm sorry, $100 billion a year. $100 billion a year. Hang on, I'll bring up the external for you. $100 billion a year. Gee, I've had $100 billion. $100 billion a year, so divide that by 365 equals 273 million a day. Divide that by 24 hours in a day. Dana, 24, Dana. So that's $11 million an hour. Let's divide it one more time by 60 minutes and get a minute. That's $190,000 a minute. They want $190,000 a minute. That's huge money. Who wants it, Dana? A corporation known as United Nations was created immediately after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And they're just a corporation. They have no sovereignty over your countries. There's just this bizarre, it's a bizarre death cult. And it's a secret society and a death cult. They know Fukushima is happening. They're not stupid. This is the cover story, right? COP's climate of Good cop, bad cop. How protests at the UN UN. So if I start up a company called a UA and have climate talks, that's exactly what they've got done. They're appointed by countries, the people that are sitting on the table, because it's been going on for 75 years, and everybody wants to be king of the castle for a year, right? This is a death cult that are leading you away from solutions to finish you off. They're the Pied Piper. They're going to lead you down to the head of the wharf. You're all going to jump in the ocean and none of you can swim. How protests at the UN climate talks will be policed. Oh yeah, like police, 10,000 of them. Protesters. Like as long as you carry their message and be polite, they're not going to beat you up. Is what they're saying. Scottish police chiefs, and they had some nasty ones over there, haven't they? And so there's one every 20 feet for the so-called, a lot of people have gone down there. So media labeled them immediately as activists and protesters, right? And you got to be careful because the police will dress up like a protester and go break windows so these guys can show up and cave your head in. And the media will, when you see the media all gathering on a corner and riot police around the other side, get out of there, okay? Around 10,000 officers will be deployed each day, all day, with Scotland's forces being bolstered by little goblins from other parts. The police down there are just, there's some good people, I'm sure, but they're corrupt because everybody else is corrupt, right? It's an incredibly corrupt, low IQ force. They don't want smart people because that's dangerous for the parliament. Firearm officers, mounted branch, so horses, dog handlers, like vicious dogs, search teams, And Marine units will all be used in what is said to be the largest policing operation ever undertaken in Scotland. And Police Scotland. Police Scotland. What a name. Said teams from other parts of the UK would receive detailed briefings on the style and tone of policing ahead of being deployed. So either go out and break heads or go out and go easy. Many thousands more expected, including visitors, medias, and activists. If you show up and you're not media, you're an activist. You're labeled. And you're going to get that label for the rest of your life because you're using face recognition technology on every one of you. They're going to have all your dossiers will show up on the police little screen inside their helmets. Major demonstrations are being planned to coincide with the talks. They got 10 million cameras in the United Kingdom, right? CCTV cameras that the government installed, which are seen as crucial in the global mission to halt runaway climate change. Runaway climate change. Now that narrative is because of Fukushima. That's runaway climate change. Like, think about this. Let me get back here. Where am I? Nobody knows where I'm to anymore. If I keep clicking, I'll eventually get back here. That's Fukushima plume. Let me show you how bad this plume actually is. That's France's version. That's the Pacific Ocean, a continuous plume, killing all the species. Same thing with the continents, killing all the insects, all the bacteria in your forests. This is why you have an accelerated forest. The glaciers can't crystallize because there's so much radiation, so they're disappearing. All the Rocky Mountains are already gone. I've done research there for 6 years. After Fukushima, I've done species counts. This is the Atlantic Ocean for 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean when they're coming home. Species counts, this is the real deal. This is Europe, and this is all covered, everything is covered in radioactive fallout, pulsing energy every second. Pulsing energy every second. That's global warming. Carbon can't cause global warming. All carbon does is like any other particulate floating around. Eventually gets washed out of the atmosphere with rain, right? This is radiation, though. It's an invisible snowstorm at the one time covering the planet. It's still melting down in Japan. It's still hemorrhaging 24/7. They're not trying to resolve it. They lost a lot of the reactor cores when they detonated. I'll show you something. Bear with me. We're almost there. I'll show you how bad it actually is from the radiation fallout. So you can see the Pacific over there is a continuous plume. It's continuous. This was right away, too. So I launched research expeditions along the coastline year after year. And I covered the whole coastline with one of the boats is over there. And that's all the way from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. I repeated that year after year. And what I discovered was all the species were missing. And to your left is what it should look like. These are authentic before and after pictures. And then to the right, you can see all the species are gone. And now I've done this year after year after year. Well, we got the big one up. Year after year after year. I get off course here. And it's not always good weather, obviously, but... And so as I went through the coastline, what I started discovering was all the species to your left were exterminated. That's an extinction event. You'll never take the pictures to your left again. This footage is right by Alaska. I'm 5 or 6 miles away from Alaska. And I'm taking my dog in to take a pee before we move down the coast. Because we've been on the go all day. The big boat is just parked at a camera's range. So this was perfect conditions. This is right on the open ocean. There's 27,000 islands in British Columbia. This is just a few kilometers away from Alaska. Yeah. Let's go take a pee before we go. So I went along the whole coastline. As you can see to the left, all the species to the right are gone for sure. Now I repeated this 6 years in a row. Year after year I went back to the same spots, and the species to your left didn't come back. This was due to Fukushima nuclear meltdown. So when you see these plumes, I'll speed it up a bit for you. It's hard to appreciate what that actually means, right? All that radiation. What it means is it wipes out all the species. You see to the left, they're gone. You'll never see that again. That's permanent, see? We wiped out all the species, and because the species never came back, meant we killed the ocean. Because the ocean is normally a soup of life. So when you see headlines saying deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world, they're not talking about carbon. They're talking about Fukushima. We went and verified it. I've done most of it by myself. And sure enough, the species are gone. You'll never see that picture again. And that was normal. Every rock would normally look like that if it wasn't covered in mussels or algae. Hey Zoe. A little too rough out there. That's what a typical day looks like. In a few weeks. And this is a typical day. And this is the end to a typical day for me. Always miserable, man. And what we discovered though was all the species had disappeared. And I know because I went from British Columbia, Vancouver, around Vancouver Island, that's 400-mile island, up and 400 miles back, many times. Done the whole west side of Canada, the open ocean, on 2 different years. I've done multiple expeditions, and the species were wiped out due to Fukushima radioactive fallout. That's global warming, see? It also pulses energy. That's the radioactive fallout from Japan is causing all of this. So these plumes, that's global warming, for sure. Not maybe, not probably. It's not a conjecture. It's not an opinion. This is unequivocal. I've done the research expeditions. We're doing them here on the East Coast now. No spiders in the woods. Imagine, this should be 140 square meter, 500,000 an acre. There's nothing. And last year was 450 kilometers away from home in the woods in the middle of nowhere on the quad and the trailer. And they took down my YouTube channel that I was about to load a video from ground zero up of the tally of that day. And my site was gone. 24,000 subscribers, no emails, no strikes. Just, whoop, we got to get rid of you. And so I created this channel 2 months ago. So they're going to jack specialist protest removal squads. The military will also be there. They'll have vans. They'll pull in. There'll be a couple of guys in the crowd will just throw you towards the van. 2 guys will grab you and throw you in the van. They'll disappear you. They'll take you down, process you, get you a lawyer, but they'll scare the shit out of you in the process. They'll just come scoop you right off the side of the road, right out of the crowd. There'll be lots of agent provocateurs down there. this will be the industries, right? And the governments will come in and break windows so the stormtroopers can wear their fancy outfits and play with their toys and bludgeon everybody with hardwood sticks or worse. IAEA issues report. Now, IAEA is United Nations. And no one knows who created them. They were created in 1957. In 1959, they started reporting to the United Nations. And what the United Nations is a corporation, that's all they are, of the military-industrial complexes. You hear tell of coalitions before going to war? This is lobbyists, right? And they created United Nations and called themselves authorities. And over 75 years, they put key lobbyists in key positions. They've taken over your universities and your medias. They captured them, captured your regulators, captured key positions in your government. They're a death cult for sure. That's IAEA. They're incredible scum. Unbelievable degenerates is the only way to describe United Nations. And there's a few there that had pangs of conscience over the years. But these are scumbags. The IAEA, this is a credible death cult. They are perpetual liars. They're 100% perpetual liars. Now, creepy, speaking of creepy, what the cops done to Greta Thunberg, an 18-year-old activist who got sucked into this machine, and they love putting someone on a pedestal, right? And then that keeps them out being capable, especially young people, because they got all these people looking at me. They get distracted, and they're playing with they're not learning and not producing, right? And then she got put on a pedestal. So when she showed up, the United Kingdom's cops surrounded her. I mean, it was like they had the president of the United States was just being shot at, and they were trying to sneak him out of there, right? And they're all shielding him. It was really a spectacle. No one's going to harm her. A lot of activists are like her a lot, and they would have marched behind her. She would have started protesting right away. She would have rallied the group right away for doing something. It's not going to be Fukushima because she's not aware of it. That doesn't mean she won't be, and those kids won't be in some point. Those kids wake up to Fukushima, it's all over for the industry. I guarantee you that right now. And they know it. So they snatched her. Arriving in Glasgow was a specially chartered climbing train. Carried hundreds of activists and European politicians, to the summit. You remember that agent provocateur I was talking about before? They were on that train. Having traveled through the Netherlands and Belgium, why are activists calling for COP26 to be cancelled? Well, first off, United Nations is just a corporation. They've got no sovereignty over Canada or anybody else. They can suck my elbow. And so they got her on a pedestal. They got all the gobblish media right behind her. Look at this. Now, you take an 18-year-old who was trying to protest is now put on a platform way out of her league and then being assaulted by the scum, degenerate, captured media. Like, I'd immediately run home and get a shower if I was that close to media. I'd burn my clothes right after, too. Ew. So you got all these adoring fans that are there trying to change the world. They've been captured by United Nations public relation firms. There's like 1,000 of them, right? And their job is to seize upon opportunities. Never let an opportunity go to waste is their motto. So think about renewables. So retiring 100 gigawatts of nuclear capacity in 10 years' time may threaten supply. In 2020, the net increase in just 12 months was 261 gigawatts. That's equal to 300 nuclear power plants. There's 440 on a day, of them on a day. So they can have 600 running this year if they're trying, right? Or at least 50% more than that. But now every nuclear power plant needs at least 2 oil, gas, or coal plants to run the nuclear power plant, dedicated to the nuclear power site itself. It needs 2 power plants to work. So renewables was 261 gigawatts last year at 300 nuclear power plants of renewables and electricity. Nuclear industry would take them 100 years to build another 300 because the new regulations they finally got. Those who argue we absolutely must construct nuclear plants to beat the climate emergency are clearly lunatics. So first off, one of the most important things you want to take away, and because this is the day one, they're going to have 12 more days of this. I'm going 12 more days in a row, so I'm going to be doing this for 13 days straight. And pumped hydro could deliver 100% renewable electricity. Now, pumped hydro, there's 500,000 spots worldwide, so you can store solar, wind, and tidal extra energy. Well, you don't need to store tidal because tide energy, where you put generators in the ocean, the tide always does the same thing, right? You can have a nuclear war, the tide will still do the same thing. Flow of water to generate electricity. You pump water up a hill with excess electricity. When there's no sunshine or wind, water comes down the hill. You can also have, if you don't have water, you can have boat, you can have just dig tunnels and use excess energy to compressed air in tunnels at about 120 psi, is low pressure. And then when there's no wind or sunshine, you can have pumped hydro and compressed air. You got enough energy stored for 2 weeks, roughly. So you can do it without sunshine and wind for 2 weeks. Base is covered, right? But don't forget that they created, last year, 300 nuclear power plants were the renewables. Nuclear is climate change, 100%. So when you go way back to nuclear testing, well, each of these lines is on America, are 3 or more nuclear clouds from above ground detonations. Now, all underground detonations vented hundreds and hundreds of meters up into the air, and then the wind would have carried it like the rest of it, right? But so that's global warming. You kill all the bacteria in the forest, for instance. The forests don't break down, so the litter doesn't break down in the forest. And when you have forest fires, they're much more intense. And then because you have the country heating up, because it's pulsing energy every second. See my Geiger counter up there? That's radiation. Could be outdoors, pulsing energy every second through the wall. Just gamma, though. My Geiger counter only picks up gamma. It doesn't pick up alpha. Doesn't pick up betas, lethal beta, and doesn't pick up deadly lethal neutrons. Air travel industry's emissions fall outside the scope of Paris of the COP26, the Conference of Parties 26 agreement. So they can't, like air pollution, releasing air 40,000 feet up in the air, it's easy for it to get in the upper and lower troposphere, and then it could take 10 years to rain out after that. But they're up there all day, every day, 365 days a year, and there's no rules on them. There's no incentive for them to come up with a better design. There's no incentive for them. And they use the best of the best fuel goes into the airplanes. What are you going to do when you run out of it? Might as well do it now. Air travel industry emissions fall outside the scope. You know, another thing that falls outside the scope is all the satellites and rockets they put up into space. Well, first off, you talk about the carbon footprint of space, you're talking about a lot. Like when you talk about their whole facilities, how they use the best of everything for those facilities, and the best of the best fuel for all their other things. All the decades and decades of trying to come up with ways to do this. Like, the pollution is absurd we're talking about, by the way. And how many rockets did they create before they finally got to the shuttles, eh? All these experiments, tens of thousands for each country. It's not just one country we're talking about. And now you got private companies doing the same thing twice a week. Blasting holes through the atmosphere, but leaving these incredible amount of fuel or plumes in the worst place you can do it. It rains down on the entire planet from that environment, see? There's no rules or regulations. COP26 is not going to put any regulations on those guys. Or these guys, the military. We'll get to that in a second. A trip to the space station would cost tourists $52 million. That's some carbon-free stuff there, tell you what. How nuclear bombs affect the environment. Well, the radiation released is similar to what Japan's reactors have done. But Japan's reactors are constantly releasing it. Like a rocket only burns for so long, an aircraft only flies for so long. Nuclear meltdowns never stop hemorrhaging into the environment. They're the ultimate planet killers. And this is a plutonium-239 dispersal. It's just one of 1,000 fission products you better worry about. So they've done a lot of high-altitude nuclear explosions. And declassified images from 1945, 1962, the United States performed around 210 upper atmosphere. You're talking about hundreds of kilometers up, where whole countries right across America lost radios and communication lines and telephone poles. So it does have a very serious effect. When they were doing underground nuclear testing, one of the things some scientists took note of was that it changed the structure of water up to 1,800 miles away in the circumference of the nuclear detonation. And so when you change the structure of water that way, structured water, a plant will grow 30% bigger with 30% more foliage and mature 30% sooner for its fruit and everything else. With structured water. So when you change the structure of water, there is an effect on the environment for 3,600 miles, 1,800 miles in any direction, right? That's a long way, okay, when you're talking about. So the military-industrial complex is one of the big polluters. Holy crap. So you take Russia and America and China and Britain and India and Pakistan and Israel. I don't know if we can include Canada, but we'll include Canada. Canada's pretty pathetic, right? We got 4 submarines. They're all at the West Edmonton Mall. Pathetic. And thank goodness, in any given year, the United States military pumps more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere than some countries, and industrialized countries at that. Try wrapping your mind around that. In 2017, the Pentagon's total greenhouse gas emissions were greater than the greenhouse gas emissions of Sweden, Denmark, and Portugal. So Sweden, Denmark, and Portugal can go back home. America got you covered. The U.S. operates more than 800 military installations. It's actually 900, I think, isn't it? Maintaining an expansive military sprawl requires significant investment in carbon-intensive infrastructure. They got 49 bases around Iran for decades, loaded with biological, chemical, and military weapons. You got to fund all that on top of this. You got to fuel the non-stop movement of troops. They got a huge navy. They have their own ships full of fuel following them around all the time, right? Get rid of the military worldwide. Everybody else can go out and get a second car. Just one of the military jets, the B-52 Stratoforce, consumes as much fuel in an hour as an average car driver uses in 7 years. Per hour. I can't remember how, I'd done the numbers on it. It used to be, it's in a different file, but it was fun to do the numbers on it. Jet fuel is the military's most heavily used fuel, like per hour we're talking about. And they have them up to 24, the B-52 Fortresses, Stratofortress. They fly 24/7. They have fuelers chasing them around. They fly 24/7, high altitude on top of that, so they're least fuel efficient, and they release an incredible amount into the environment because they're not very fuel efficient at those heights, right? Just in case Russia pulls the trigger, they want to finish the planet off with their own nuclear weapons. Literally, the stupidest people on the planet are running these operations. You can't have a nuclear war. It's a waste of time to have the B-52 because you can't have a nuclear war. You can't cash your paychecks if you have a nuclear war. They can make too much money. They're never going to give up their paycheck. Jet fuel is the military's most heavily used fuel. Each air mission produces hundreds of tons of CO2 pollution at a very high altitude on top of that. They're the worst case scenario, these guys. They have a well-known history of fighting wars for oils, and that ain't going to stop. The military budget in 2020 was 272 times larger. This is just the US, not Russia and China and everybody else. And the federal budget for energy efficiency and renewable energies. They're a plague on all species, is what they are. The coming New World Order, disorder. The so-called international community failed to deliver on the climate change. You can't because Fukushima is still melting down. Nuclear arms control, no, because you need fear to keep control of the monetary, and poverty before the pandemic. So they created the pandemic, is what they meant to say. Pandemic is meant to cover up what Fukushima is doing. Greta Thunberg arrives in Glasgow ahead of... So Yahoo News went nuts on Greta. Yahoo was pumping out Greta stories everywhere. Another story. Arrives in Glasgow ahead of it. Climate change activist. They got her labeled as mobbed by press and activists as she arrived in Glasgow by train. When is the Yahoo again? When is the COP26 summit? Who's attending and what is COP about? Conference of Parties. They're not going to tell you that though. Who's attending the Conference of Parties 26 and Greta Thunberg is going? So they had to include her everywhere. It was really weird. Getting past the blah, 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 which is Greta. Scum media. Greta Thunberg's climate train arrives in Glasgow for COP26 despite unofficial invite. Rockstar reception for Greta, greeted by thousands. The cops moved in and just removed her. All she had to do was go, yeah, and there were thousands of people. Let's get them. It would have been awesome. They were terrified. British cops are just lunatics, but... Greta Thunberg has received a rockstar reception. She arrived in Glasgow. And look at the head of his video. Collar hits out at Oregon. They're attacking her. The Swedish teen climate change activist was mobbed by adoring fans. So she's... what they're doing to her is trying to get her to the position where she's afraid to go public, right? And they want to take over her fans, is what they're trying to do. Who became a global symbol for the carbon. No, they turned her into it because she didn't know any better, because she was naive on the nuances. She ever watches one of my videos, you are in real trouble in this industry. Imagine turning 1 million kids tomorrow morning against the nuclear industry. Which is what you need to do, right? There'll be 10 million the next day, 20 million the day after. I can retire. who became a global symbol from the carbon neutral movement after boycotting school. So now they're like turning her into a rebel, talking to Twitter. How many times have we seen this now? She wrote, "Finally in Glasgow, and thank you for the very warm welcome." And look what the cops got done to her. And if you go watch the videos, they're like, they're trying to, you know what I'm saying? It's like there's snipers all over the place, and they're the superheroes or something. It's the damnedest thing I ever saw. One of the strangest things I've ever seen. And if you go watch the videos of the cop escorting her out of the train station down the sidewalk, like she doesn't understand. She wasn't expecting this. It was part of a campaign to lobby banks in the wider global financial system stop supporting the use of fossil fuels. They're trying to blame fossil fuels on global warming, but 15 container ships produce more pollution than all the cars on the planet. I showed you that at the beginning of the presentation if you're just joining us. Video footage picked up members of her group swearing at photographers. Of course you did, you scumbags. One bystander, this is a conjecture their media is using now, right, was heard asking the world-famous activist, "Are you happy to be in Glasgow?" And one of Miss Thunberg, you're talking about an 18-year-old, and they're calling her Miss freaking British media. One of Thunberg's minders was heard replying abruptly, "Get a life." God, you gotta hate media. Pope should send Greta Thunberg to COP26 in his place. Arrives in Glasgow for COP summit for the Conference of Parties Summit. Political reporter, right? She get a big thumbs up. So the media just took over the airways with Greta. Surrounded by cops. Look at this. It's unbelievable, man. It's unbelievable. Police are idiots. This is idiot to do that to a kid like that. No one's, how's somebody going to attack? Why is somebody going to attack her for? What do you need to do that for? Because British police are literally goblins. Hundreds of activists rallied in Glasgow to urge the world leaders to act on climate change in the biggest protest yet in the Scottish city. Hundreds. Well, that tells you that's a police state, and that's the only time you've seen that. Joining them from Sweden, teen green icon Greta. My God, they got her turned into a celebrity now, where she's going to get the royal treatment. Oh no, police got to be with you and monitor you 24/7. It's too dangerous for you to be by yourself. Boris Johnson says Glasgow Climate Summit is the world's moment of truth. Boris shouldn't be allowed to speak. It should be a crime. He should get like a $100,000 fine every time he opens his pie hole. Farmers among those most directly impacted by climate, says Saskatchewan. Farmers head at the COP26 summit, Conference of Parties. And again, Boris saying that the world's moment of truth and leaders must seize the moment. Like, never let a crisis go to waste, basically. What's at stake for Asia? What's at stake for Asia? Don't get nuclear. They're showing nuclear, right? Don't get that. Now, this is a big... the COP Climate of Parties 26 is a nuclear love fest. It's a big nuclear orgy. They're there to promote nuclear. The fabled small modular reactors that don't even exist. And anything nuclear. Nuclear suppositories, radium makeup. They'll sell it to you if you thought they can get away with it. If we're not protecting the planet, we're not protecting our patients. So here's a bunch of doctors got sucked into the meat machine. Princess Anne was making a mockery of the Conference of Parties 26. Royals with 3 helicopter trips in 12 days. She's like, what do you mean I shouldn't use a helicopter? Why are they taking a picture of me? Go stomp their guts out. I'm the princess. Oh yeah, and the crazies are out. Her brother Charles is committed to the cause. He's got 150 servants. 150 servants in his house, in his mansion. He's even got one to put a condom on when he's out there playing with the sheep here. Top Hong Kong newspaper. Fukushima is a global threat. Fukushima is a global threat. The situation could prove catastrophic for the world. Because they're talking about this radiation. This is Neptunium-239 dispersal from the numbers from TEPCO. Covering the planet with an invisible plume, pulsing energy every second, exterminating our planet. We got 28 votes on a poll. How the hell? And we only got 89% of people. Is Fukushima nuclear meltdown, radioactive fallout, nuclear testing the cause of climate change? I guess that doesn't work. It's hard to imagine that a few people said that this radioactive fallout covering the entire planet forever, invisible plume continuously still coming out of there because you won't stop the climate change machine from killing us, which is the nuclear meltdown. They're not even trying. No nuclear scientists have ever went to Medusa, to the Fukushima reactors. Fukushima radiation still circling the globe. Levels consistently rise and fall in 40-day cycles. You can see my 40-day cycle up there, 281 counts per minute. Oh. So you got these invisible plumes. My Geiger counter doesn't pick up neptunium or americium or the plutonium or the uranium or the curium. Mine only picks up gamma. Here's a model of 1 million becquerels a square meter on the west coast. 1 million atoms the size of your coffee table for the whole country, Canada, United States. This model is from France. The model is based on venting. It's based on venting. This is the Pacific Ocean. Now the model stopped, but the plume didn't. The Atlantic Ocean, Europe, Iceland, Greenland, Canada, United States, blah, blah, blah. The whole planet in an invisible snowstorm of radioactive fallout, pulsing energy every second. And somebody got the balls to say that it's not? What the hell, man? In my poll? How dare you? By the way, cesium remains dispersed throughout the water column from the surface to the ocean floor and back again. So from the surface to the ocean floor, it's bang a gong, get it on, rock and roll, baby. And they don't want you to stop Fukushima. You try to stop Fukushima, this is what happens to you. So I agree that Fukushima can be an extinction event. It's a myth that the disaster is being contaminating much of the Pacific coastline. No. The whole Pacific coast. Let's see. Let me see. Here we go. Now that map is a German map. Now remember the airborne maps? It covered the planet in about 7 days. In 14 days, the entire planet. But here's what they
maybe
said.
worse than thought. Studies from last year indicate that radioactive water will contaminate the entire Pacific Ocean in just 6 years. Kim Min-ji reports.
This graphic shows the gradual contamination of the Pacific Ocean due to leaks of radioactive water from the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan. The simulation, which was run by a German marine research institute, shows the entire Pacific waters being polluted by radioactive water in just 6 years.
6 years? Well, now it's 10 years. The problem was, the only time there's stuff hemorrhaging into the ocean, it would do that. The planet was covered immediately. That's 468 hours. Oh, geez, I forget me, Matt. Let's do the big screen. 468 hours divided by the big shot 2/4, and we get 19 days. That's 19 days later. As you can see, it's a continuous plume. The problem is, it's still coming out of there. That's the global warming machine is nuclear. All nuclear power is hemorrhaging radiation from their fuel pools. And when they change their fuel, they open up the containment and let the radiation loose in the environment. Former official, this is a disaster of all humanity, the entire world. Yeah, and you better get it together. So they're trying to lead you away from the truth. All I'm trying to do for the next 12 days, God help me, is show you nothing but the facts. Hopefully you find me. I hope you find me and you learn something and you help stop this mass genocide, omnicide machine. So this was a model of the Xenon-133. It burns a hole through your lungs and your pets and your animals in the forest and plants and insects, rather, and birds. Time to quit nuclear power altogether threatens the very existence of human civilization as we know it. Time to quit nuclear power. You know why? Because it has these kinds of attributes where we're now dealing with massive radioactive fallout, pulsing energy every second, heating the planet up. Coal doesn't do that. Carbon doesn't do that. Oil doesn't do it. Gas doesn't do that. But radiation does. Human civilization, Michio Kaku, a famous physicist from the United States, says human civilization may destroy itself. I mean, look at Fukushima, liquefaction of 3 nuclear power plants' reactor cores. Yeah, and what it meant is the releases covers the whole planet in brutal radioactive fallout, and that kills all the species in increments. This is what we see happening now. Nobel Prize winner on Japan's biggest TV. Only way to preserve human life is to completely turn away from nuclear power. So Fukushima radioactive fallout is global warming. That's not up for debate. That's a fact. Right? That's a fact. Coal, oil, gas, and carbon doesn't pulse energy every second. I'm only telling you 500 more times. There was a recent story in the media talking about gadgets, and he said nuclear power has the risk of destroying the planet, by the way. They got it, and he probably got it from me. Fukushima radioactive fallout is global warming. So this is the Atlantic Ocean, that's the Pacific over there, United States, Canada. And this is why you're not seeing flocks of birds flying by anymore. This is why you're not cleaning your windshields on your cars as much when you go on trips. This is why you're not seeing any spiders here on the East Coast or fish jumping in the ponds. Time to quit nuclear power altogether threatens the very existence of human civilization as we know it. And this is the fallout map from France of Japan's radiation based on a model based on a venting event, not the actual nuclear meltdowns. Covers the entire planet in fission products. Tokyo legal experts, once a nuclear accident occurs, everything is over. Zero prospects of ever restoring the fishing grounds. All will be lost. This is the reality of nuclear energy. And the climate of parties, COP26, is about promoting nuclear as the solution. Nuclear power generation is the only invention that may destroy the future of human beings. Not may, is now for sure going to do it. We need to mitigate as much as we can. The Ambassador Murata, Japan's Ambassador Murata, writes to U.S. Secretary General, it is no exaggeration to say the fate of Japan and the whole world depends on number 4 reactor. The whole world depends on a building? Jeez, what does that look like, I wonder? Oh, that's it over there, by the way. It's gone. But here's the media pretending it's not gone. Someone should play that clip for Greta Thunberg over and over and over.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, leading to the country's worst nuclear disaster.
Now that's some twisted shit there, man. All the media done this, come out and pretend that they were on top of that building, Reactor 4 over there. The same reactor that Japan's ambassador, U.S. Ambassador Murata, writes to UN Secretary General. No exaggeration to say that the fate of Japan and the whole world depends on number 4 reactor. So then why are they faking it? Because it's global warming on steroids. We may not be able to live in Japan someday. Radiation is going to be flowing out for a long period of time. In the first year, Japan had an extra 865 cancers, but there's 1,800 illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries you'll get before cancer. Heart problems, liver problems, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, diabetes. We are expecting diabetes in the children from Fukushima. 6 in 10 Fukushima children tested with diabetes. Inhaling particles increase radiation exposure by a factor of 1 trillion. Because it's in your body, pulsing energy every second. Your body attacks it with white blood cells permanently for the rest of your life. That means you have less red blood cells in your body for the rest of your life. And red blood cells carry oxygen and nutrition throughout your body, right? But if you get more radiation because you're eating radioactive food from Japan all the time, you got leukemia. You can get leukemia in a week of eating Japanese food. Think about this study. They buried the study. They actually buried this study. So pre-Fukushima was 1 to 2 children per million in Japan would have thyroid tumors because they got 54 nuclear power plants at that time, right? So radiation is always hemorrhaging out. Now it's 13,646 out of 40,000. That's 36 scaled up. That'd be 360,000 out of 1 million. When it used to be 1 to 2 per million. Children. All those children marching at the climate summit finds out about that, buddy. Congenital heart disease operation rose 14% after Fukushima. Like, say 100 per 100,000 would be crazy. But 12,000 or 14,000 per 100,000, 14,200 per 100,000 live births have complex congenital heart diseases in neonates and infants. It means they need open heart surgery. It's absurd numbers. As the public, possibly worldwide, sickens over time, the truth will come out about Fukushima radioactive fallout. As the public, possibly worldwide, gets sick from a nuclear power plant breaking down. Try wrapping your mind around that statement. Fukushima is the most serious man-made disaster in human history. Obesity rate doubled. Obesity weight gain after a nuclear crisis is a marker of radiation brain damage. So don't go making fun of your obese friends. Unprecedented spike, 1,500 atoms of radioactive sulfur per cubic meter detected in the California air. 1,500 atoms of the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. caused by spraying salt water on 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperature nuclear meltdowns. And so they suck up the uranium plutonium into these spherical, like these little spears, circles, like a little soccer ball, is what the sulfur looks like, a little soccer ball, and it sucks in uranium, plutonium, americium, plutonium, strontium, all the hot particles, and they're very mobile. They're easy to reliberate into the environment. They hang out close to the ground, pulsing energy at the speed of light. So when they hit each other at the speed of light, they change direction. At the speed of light creates this X-ray effect throughout your forest. And it's very bad for all species and bacteria and everything. And humans, of course, and mammals and animals and insects and spiders. And I've seen all these this year, 450-kilometer research expedition doing species counts, and seeing endless ants nests, but no ants. And there was no spiders in the woods. Every day I spend 3 to 4 to 5 hours in the woods looking for spiders and other species, but mostly spiders because they're easy to spot. The webs tends to concentrate in the testicles. Think about this study. 360 plus atoms of radioactive sulfur per day may have been inhaled by Californians after Fukushima. That's going to be true for birds and animals and mammals, and the insect population are hammered with radioactive sulfur, peroxide, hydrogen, buckyballs. These are hot particles. So you can have endless health problems before cancer shows up. Cancer's latent. It's usually the last one to show up, right? Radioactive rain caused 130 schools in Korea to close. 130 schools to close because that's how radioactive fallout works. So the plume never stops. The model stops, but the plume doesn't. It just keeps getting thicker and thicker until you can't. And the models are only based on venting. They're not based on those actual nuclear meltdowns. There's 3 nuclear meltdowns, reactors running that melted down, and 4 buildings had 4 or 8 fuel pools, 2 in each building, disappear. Blew up and caught fire and blew up, whatever. They had decades of reactor cores stored in those pools. There's no containment, and they're always hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. But when you liberate them through a meltdown, they're monsters. Radiation data from Seattle area survey to be withheld by the feds for national security. So there was where the hell was it? That'll come up. They had found 450,000 times background levels. 40 million becquerels of iodine in a single bed of kelp off California. The elephant in the room is Fukushima radiation when it comes to the Pacific Ocean animal die-offs. Now, I showed you earlier the expeditions that I went on for 6 years. They showed an extinction event. That's what they're alluding to. That's 2015. That's just before the Paris Accord. It hasn't taken effect anyway. And so there's no such thing in these headlines as global warming or climate change or anything like that, right? That was the cover-up for Fukushima nuclear meltdown's effect on the species. Animals continue to starve. There are animals starving as the food chain continues to collapse. Mass starvation event plagues the west coast of North America. I was doing expeditions at the time. So it works like this for humans. It's going to be even harder on animals and birds and mammals and everything else. But 50 becquerels a kilogram in humans lead to irreversible lesions in the vital organs. And that children with over 11 becquerels a kilogram of just cesium, which is just one of 1,000 fission products you need to worry about, start to see heart problems. That was a study from Chernobyl. And irreversible heart damage for children with 50 becquerels a kilogram of cesium-137. Japan is shipping out around 850 million pounds of rice out of the nuclear wasteland each year. They never stop growing food and shipping it. It's a 100% genocide, ecocide, omnicide machine. Nuclear is despicable. So it causes heart attacks and everything else. In fact, there's one community in Japan where in a single month, death rates might give the creeps to some people, was an extra 12,700 people in 1 month died of heart attacks. Not cancer, but heart attacks, because they got the population thinking that only cancer is the only thing you need to worry about. And we've been at this for a long time. After Fukushima nuclear meltdown, they didn't say we should call in nuclear experts or nuclear scientists or the IAEA or ERPA or UNSCLEAR or the IPCC. No. We should call in the universities, nuclear students or nuclear scientists. No. It's time to make a geezer suicide squad. Those 60 and older should prepare to die at the nuclear power plant when it breaks down. Until they're all gone. 60 and older should be prepared to die. People who work all their lives and ready to retire, and they should be prepared to die because the nuclear industry is having a bad day. The Vice Governor suggested a Fukushima draft where you just drag you off the street and take you to the nuclear meltdown. Sale of foreign Geiger counters was banned. The radioactive material from the reactors is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poisons. Now, industrial poisons are poisonous. Imagine making it 2 billion times more toxic than that. That's radioactive fallout. That's why we see all the species dying, because it's 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poisons. This is why you see the species die off, see? Okay, all right, okay. You know what I mean? You mean what I know? No, because you're dealing with this friggin' zombie industry. So radioactive material from reactors 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. So when you have these big plumes covering your country, you need to get busy. You need to come up with solutions, not pretend it's not happening. That's climate change. Move south to the equator if Unit 4 fuel pool goes dry. Oh, you mean that one right there? And the pools will be at the top of the building. He used to make the assemblies, Arnie Gunnarsson, used to make the assemblies. So why is he not telling you the fuel pools are gone? He says move south of the equator if it goes.
The division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima.
So how could he not know the fuel pools are gone? How does that work? He made them for 73 similar plants. The decades of reactor cores were kept in those 2 pools at the top of the buildings. So how come Arnie Gunnarsson or Greenpeace never said she's not in that building? She's faking it. How come?
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, leading to the country's worst nuclear disaster.
Right, so why is she faking it? Why is nobody calling her on it? Right, the pools are at the very top of the building. They're gone. Everybody knows it if you're paying attention, but all the media refuse to say they're gone. They're all saying that they're at the top of a building that don't even exist. Gunnar says move south if it goes. Why, it's gone. It's already gone, though. Work at Fukushima plant to go on for 10,000 years. Or until they run out of homeless, whatever comes first, I suppose. Well, there you go, look. 30,000 delegates. And $5,000 suits. They're a bunch of terrorist group, right? They're a terrorist group because they're not trying to warn you of the real problem. They're not trying to educate you that gas, oil, coal, and carbon doesn't create plumes covering the whole planet, pulsing energy every second for millions of years. They're leading you away from the truth. That's why I have a massive 37 people on my show tonight. It's taken me over a decade to get up to this. If you work hard, your dreams come true. You know that, right? Sir David Attenborough, somebody should drown that in a toilet. He's a despicable, human-hating scum. Code Red for Humanity by UN General Secretary. I'm the General Secretary of the nuclearproctologist.org. It's a think tank, anti-nuclear, pro-life think tank. Conference of Parties 26 is not a time for petty constitutional politics, says the scumbag gobblish media. It's not a time for petty constitutional politics. So get rid of your constitutions, your Bill of Rights, and your Magna Cartas. The sun told you so. You know, the Scottish government has spent masses of taxpayer cash on events for this. Masses of cash. Taxpayer cash. We also faced the threat of hardline protesters disrupting Glasgow. Our message to the numbskulls, like insulate Britain, is simple. Insulate Britain is a group that says you should insulate all the houses in Britain. Terrorist, eh? That's real terrorism, that is, dear boy. Well, you want to do something good, you terrorist. Should be ashamed of yourselves. How dare you do something good? It's just, can't believe people exist like that anymore. You're causing misery for everyday folks who need to be outside for the climate battle. Climate battle. I haven't heard that one. Your conduct is doing the exact opposite of winning over hearts and minds, which is what they used to say during Vietnam War, when they were spraying Agent Orange over the country for 9 years straight, which is banned worldwide, a chemical now banned. They took the branches or leaves off every tree in Vietnam for 10 years. There's 3 million children there that are completely disfigured because of the chemicals. Isn't alienating people at the worst possible time. And none of your destructive stunts help the planet, not one jot. Whoever wrote that is a ninny, man. Wow. People in the city also have every right to feel offended, angry even, that Glasgow is gallantly being spruced up at the last minute, not for the benefit of ordinary folks, but for visitors. Ordinary folks, taxpayers. You hired a government, and then they told you to get lost. They took over. And citizens, not just in Scotland, but across the globe, are counting on their leaders, dispatched amid a time of crisis, with COVID still raging, to live up to their responsibilities like heroes. I wish he'd just die and go away. He's such a degenerate, human-hating scum. As COP26 kicks off in Glasgow, oh, that's the Global Mail. Speaking of scumbags, all they do is promote uranium stocks. It's despicable. They're robbing everybody because the stocks keep going down. 10 years of uranium stock. I call them out a couple of times, big time. World leaders set to meet in bid to avert drastic global warming. You can't avert the radioactive fallout. They're going to get your umbrellas out. That ain't going to stop it. Pulsing energy every second. Fukushima radioactive fallout, pulsing energy every second for millions of years. You're going to stop that, are you? You got to stop those reactors from hemorrhaging the radiation into the environment first. That's global warming. Welcome to Glasgow. There's only 10,000 cops here, but we can bring in more on the drop of a hat. 10,000 cops. If you go watch the videos of the protesters, there's always 10 cops in your sight, no matter what video you're looking at. And they're herding them along. There'll be no protesting here. I'll smack you good with my stick. The world is heating. Yeah. Carbon doesn't heat up the planet. Gas doesn't heat up the planet. Oil doesn't pulse energy every second to heat up the planet. Carbon can't heat up a planet. It's stupid. It's impossible. The only thing that can heat up a planet is radioactive fallout. Pulsing energy every second. Gas, oil, coal, and gas don't do it. Gas, oil, coal, and carbon doesn't do it, rather. I'll get it right. Burning fossil fuel releases gases that act like a greenhouse around the Earth, trapping heat and warping the climate. No. The radioactive oceans now are heated up because they're pulsing energy every second. You got rid of the phytoplankton, the base is the food chain, the base is the oxygen chain, the base is the carbon sequestering chain. Now the ocean is heating up because it's not regulated. You don't have the glaciers melting into the ocean, regulating it in the summer times. So then it runs away. When the cyclones and typhoons and hurricanes pass over it, it's a hot ocean. There's way more energy. The storms now are seeing over 200 mile per hour sustained winds. You don't even have infrastructure for that. But if you go back pre-Fukushima, you don't see any of that. And climate change fear-mongering only goes all the way back to 2015. Since then, they ramped it up. And this year, the last couple of weeks, they gone loco on everybody with the rhetoric. 8 times in every article. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, ahead of the weekend G20 summit, drawing a parallel between climate change and the fall of the Roman Empire. Unless we get this right in tackling climate change, we can see our civilization, our world, also go backwards. BBC raped, Jimmy Savile raped over 1,000 children in the basement of that place. And they didn't razz it to the ground. No. They probably got a monument there somewhere for Jimmy Savile right now. Zero emission buses transport delegates in Glasgow. 15 container ships produce more pollution than all the cars and trucks, buses on the planet. 15 container ships. There's 96,000 of them on the ocean at any given time. World leaders face tough climate talks in G20 summit. Right, but the idea of the bus is for you to think electric, and that I'll get an electric car, that'll help. Yeah, well, so, honey, let's get an electric car. We've done our thing for United Nations. That corporation has now taken over everybody's countries. So the G20 was trying to hammer out a climate change policy, but they decided to let the nuclear love fest, COP26, do the work. On how to combat global warming ahead of the crucial corporation summit on climate change. It's equal to Walmart having a summit for climate change. It's like McDonald's having a summit for climate change. UN is just a corporation. They've got no sovereignty over you or your countries. Nothing. Zero. But you got the countries adopting the policies, suggestions this think tank lobbyist group known as UN is making. Climate environment is front and center on Sunday's genocide machine. Climate scientists were created. This climate scientist, I always get laughed at this one. I've met some of these kooks. Was created to promote nuclear. Their solution to climate is more nuclear. We've been fighting this smear machine for decades. And activists, so you're one or the other, a climate scientist or an activist, nobody else matters anymore, are likely to be disappointed unless late breakthroughs are made with drafts of the G20's final communique showing little progress in terms of new commitments to curb pollution. Asking the leaders to find a resolution at this weekend's summit. They're talking about the COP26. It's absurd, right? They're not going to fund any new coal plants, they say. Nature must be at the heart of the fight to the planet, Sir David Attenborough, degenerate human-hating scumbag, says. Yeah, Morris and Boris. Yahoo, of course, was bought by Verizon, but they changed companies on September the 1st officially this year, and now they're gone crazy on us. And Glasgow is shut down, so they can't even open up their businesses to make a few bucks. Alternative energy is all over the place, folks. What else we got? He's like a little dictator. He's like Mao or Pol Pot right now, except he's much worse. He's hiding the fact that you need to worry about Fukushima. Fukushima is heating your planet up. The radiation is pulsing energy every second. It's an invisible snowstorm of it covering the entire planet. Oh my. How are we doing? Let me check here. That's about it. We're almost through it. So, Fukushima radioactive fallout, that is global warming. If you go back through my videos, you go back to my first video, it was 17 minutes, and that tells the story, but I made better ones since that. Remember, when Chernobyl happened, they closed 9,000 farms in Ireland and Scotland and the United Kingdom. And 400 are still closed today because they're so radioactive. You should have abandoned Ireland, Scotland, and the United Kingdom because of that, from 3,000 miles away. And child's risk of cancer from the radioactive plumes covering your planet is 10 to 100 times higher than an adult. So carbon, oil, gas, and coal emissions are not going to be creating plumes covering the whole planet. 20 million particles of radioactive iodine in a study fell on the United States and Canada per liter of rainfall, which meant it was saturated with uranium and 1,000 different fission products at these high numbers, which means a lot of that is sucked up into plants and trees and into the ecosystem and annihilated the species. Xenon-133 in Washington, 450,000 times, and that's one of the models of the xenon right there, 450,000 times above detection levels and persisted for weeks. That's not going to go away in weeks. It's still hemorrhaging out of there. Not going to go away in months or years. That's there for millions of years now. You got to come up with solutions. And pretending that tin cans and pop bottles and cardboard is the problem is avoiding the problem. You got to address the problem to come up with solutions, right? You got to stop Fukushima, and you got to stop all nuclear power plants worldwide and their fuel pools. You got to deal with this. You got to come up with solutions. They're all hemorrhaging into the environment 24 hours a day because they're all still splitting the atoms. See? Inhaling just one hot particle can cause a cancer. So when you see models like that of radiation covering the planet, and radiations like that covering the planet, it's not just cancer. There's 1,800 illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries and illnesses. 220 million atoms, this is from Ottawa, Canada study, 220 million atoms per liter of rainwater. If that was on a nuclear site, you'd have to abandon a nuclear site. We're supposed to abandon North America when this happened. Child leukemia is double near French nuclear power plants. 90% higher incidence of childhood leukemia around nuclear power plants. Child cancer risk doubles if exposed to a couple of X-rays worth of radiation during pregnancies. So you got all these journalists worldwide pretending they're in a building that don't exist because there's nothing to worry about. No, Fukushima is an extinction event, and it's global warming on steroids. All of humanity to be threatened for thousands of years into the rods and Unit 4 fuel pool touch. Nothing like this has ever been attempted, said the Yale professor. Yale's supposed to be pretty reliable, right? Well, look, the pool doesn't exist because the pools were at the top of 190-foot buildings. They don't even exist. They hoodwinked you. Doomsday-like radiation release if a fire in the pool of Unit 4. It would be a global catastrophe. If the fire in the pool, like Reactor 4, that's Reactor 4, they had a fire, it was a global catastrophe. And this is what the radiation fallout looks like. Covering the whole planet in invisible plumes of radiation, pulsing energy every second. Resulting destruction will take the half the planet with it. They abandoned all the communities in Japan, and they tricked some people into going back a decade later, but that doesn't mean it's safe. So it's the same thing in hospitals. You can't cure somebody with radiation in a hospital. Surgical treatment of radiation injuries of the colon and rectum. Radiation injuries to the nervous system. Radiation-induced fractures of the femur 18 years after radiation therapy. Radiation injury to the optic nerve. Radiation injury to the lower digestive tract, to the human kidneys, to cognitive impairments, radiation bone injuries, radiation lung injuries, radiation heart injuries, radiation injuries to the intestines, cardiac injuries. So you go get radiation treatment, you get all these other illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. Climate change and nuclear war. So they're out there now. I'll show you how bad the brainwashing's got in the last number of days. So climate change, climate catastrophe, climate crisis, climate peace, climate threat, climate change. They got like a hat with all these words in it, and they just pull them out of the hat. Climate mitigation, climate change. This is called brainwashing, by the way. Alien invasion, climate change, climate ruin. They were pretty inventive, weren't they? All of that, you're bombarded with endless propaganda, so you don't look at this and say, oh crap, really? So you don't contemplate what I'm showing you and saying to you. I'm not doing this because I'm bored. Because first off, it's a lot of friggin' work to put all this together. I'm not doing this because I'm bored. And doing these expeditions, trust me, there was no fun in that. That was hellish. That was actually hellish. You're out on the ocean by yourself. Lots of times we didn't have funding to keep the operation, had to do without. Ended up in ports that I didn't have the money to leave. And finally raised enough money, head back out on the ocean. I refused to come home. Until I'd done the research of the whole coastline. Once I'd done the whole coastline, I seen all the species were gone. Well, now we got busy, right? So one massive container ship equals 50 million cars. 15 of them creates more pollution. 15 of these creates more pollution than all the cars on the planet. So the big takeaway is Fukushima radioactive fallout is global warming. That's the bottom line. You can disagree with me, but you're not looking at the evidence I provided tonight. You're not being honest. It's an absurd, ridiculous amount of work goes into these shows every week. I apologize. Hang on here. We'll get there. Let me give a shout out to everybody tonight. We raised extra 100 on Friday or Thursday from James Lucid, as you know him in your comment section. Thank you, James, so much. And I had to order in odds and ends from Amazon for the gimbal and equipment. We're almost there. We got the motor showed up for Zoom and that, and the grip showed up. Waiting for the camera cage to show up because I can mount everything to the camera cage, right? I just wish the weather would break down here. And then headed down the shore, but I couldn't find anybody to interview. I couldn't get any information on the birds that blew on the coastline emaciated. I have to head down hopefully this week again. Apparently they're still blowing in. So good night, everybody. Dana Nasana. Hi, Dana. Stabil. Pendulum. Hi, everybody. Port Angeles. Rush D wants to know is radiation in food. It is, yeah. Particularly Japanese. I only serve one king. Hi, Lori. Good night, everybody. Ella. Jack Tripper. James Mangan. Jerry Goldstein. Hi, everybody. Mutant. Botanical Garden. Thinker. Good night, everybody. Johnson. Ted. Good night, everybody. See everybody tomorrow night. Twitter this and Facebook it out to Greta. Annie, Archie. Good night, everybody. Hope everybody has a great day tomorrow. John Coleman. Few insects in Netherlands, he says. Wow. Shane Clark. Good night. God bless everybody. Have a great night, great day tomorrow. See everybody tomorrow. We're going to do this 12 days, 12 more days now. I'm sick of the lies. I'm not going to sit in silence anymore. Anna C. I'm not going to sit in silence anymore. Michael Rutz. Roots, R-I-Z, R-U-I-Z, I can't pronounce it. Just scrolling down through the names now. Quick shout out to what I see. I'm probably going to miss a few people. James Lucid is here tonight. Hi, James. Thank you again. Bird floating in the sea with a tumor on his head. Yeah, that one of the trips I had on the ocean, I found 5 dead birds. One of them, his head was a tumor. He had one eyeball. Sandra Churchill. Good night, everyone. Ease. Mr. Ruffle. Good night, everybody. We're almost to the comments here. Yeah, I sure don't get many viewers. They're all great viewers, but I don't get many, do I? It's called censorship. HTML Sam. I get everybody an honest down to the most recent comments. Yeah, don't forget the poll. I'm going to end the poll. At 40 votes. At 40 votes, 93% says yes. Fukushima and nuclear testing is global warming. Thank you, everybody, for participating in the poll. Tree fruit. Anybody I forgot? Kathy, yes. Thank you, Kathy. I dare to say I got everybody. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. If I did, I'll read it later. Okay, good night, everybody. Have a great night. See everybody tomorrow night. Apparently we got this for 12 more days. We got to kick ass. Fukushima radioactive fallout is global warming. That's a fact, and I proved it here tonight. And we'll do it again tomorrow night. I already got a bunch of conference of parties, 26 headlines ready to go for tomorrow. Lots more will show up tomorrow, I'm sure. See everybody tomorrow night. Have a great night, folks. Hugs for everybody. Take care. 396 counts on my Geiger counter a few moments ago. My God. My God, boy. Take care, folks.
Alle Menschen werden Brüder, wo dein sanfter Flügel war.